Hi everyone, welcome back to the next diecast. In today's video, I'll be showing you and reviewing this 1/21st scale Ford F-150 SVT Lighting made by Maisto. Now yes, this truck is 1/21st scale as opposed to 1/18th scale. And Bburago is actually the one who used to make this particular casting. So Maisto and Bburago merged together in 2007 after Maisto bought Bburago because they had gone bankrupt 2 years prior to that. And several former Bburago models became Maisto models, and this was one of them. Two other examples are the 1957 Corvette and the Shelby Series 1, and also the Chrysler Crossfire. I think the thinking was that all of like the Bburago models would be like European or foreign origin, I think, and then all of Bburago's American, car models became Maisto models. But then they actually kept the Dodge Viper RT10 as part of the Bburago line, and that did not become absorbed under Maisto. So I'm not really too sure what the entire decision process was for some of those models becoming Maisto models, but this was certainly one of them. So you can find this both as a Maisto casting if it was made past 2007, and a Bburago casting if it was made prior to 2007. And the Bburago and Maisto versions are going to be pretty much identical in terms of overall details and things like that. But the build quality will kind of be better for newer versions of this model. Bburago first introduced this model in 1999, which is when the real SVT Lighting actually came out. And the real truck was produced from 99 until 2004. And Bburago made this model in several different colors. It came in light blue, yellow, black, silver, as well as a red. And Bburago versions of this truck, and for the first 2 years that Maisto made this truck, it did come with two surfboards in the back, kind of propped up between the tailgate and on the roof here. But around 2009, those disappeared, and it just became kind of like a regular truck without surfboards. Maisto continues to make this model today. You can find it in this kind of cool Fire Chief color scheme, which is currently exclusively available at Sam's Club. Not sure if it'll become part of Maisto's regular lineup or not, but Maisto currently makes this in just a regular red. And the regular red version will, of course, have chrome wheels, and you won't have the light bar and the push bar that you see on the Fire Truck, or on the Fire Chief version here. Now, Maisto also made a police version last year for Sam's Club. I think it was a highway patrol livery or something, and that was pretty similar to this. Of course, obviously you had a different paint scheme, but you still had the black wheels, the light bar, which I believe was clear on that casting, or on that variation of this casting, and the same push bar. So this model will be pretty easy to find, and it is odd that it's 1/21st scale. I'm not really too sure why they made that decision, but Bburago at the time, they weren't really making any models of trucks, so I assume that because they had never done a truck model previously, prior to this one, that they had to make it kind of underscale to fit the box. Now, if Maisto had made this from the get-go, I think they probably would have made it true 1/18th scale, or at the very least closer to 1/19th scale. And you can kind of notice it when you have this up on the shelf with other models too. So I actually have here two other F-150 castings in different scales. Here's a 1/24th scale 93 Ford F-150 by Maisto, and then a 1/27 scale 2010 F-150 by Maisto. Now, although these are from different generations, they're all red, and they're all based off of regular cab versions of the F-Series pickup. So as you can see, there isn't really kind of a huge difference between the 1/24th and the 1/21st scale. So I don't think there would have been a huge difference between the 1/21st and the 1/18th scale version, if there ever was a 1/18th scale version, which there was not. And with the 1/27 scale version, even with this, you don't really see you kind of see a bigger difference in terms of height and length, but I think if you have the 1/24, the 1/27 side by side, they're almost identical in terms of size and whatnot. So I think if they had at least made this truck 1/20th or even 1/19th scale as opposed to 1/21st, I think it would have been more kind of passable when put side by side with other diecast models. But I just wanted to kind of get that cleared up in terms of the model scale. But aside from the weird scale and the quality issues that you'll see with older versions, I think this model is an overall good representation of the SVT Lighting. So we'll go ahead and take a look at the details. We'll start up here at the front. Maisto does an excellent job of the overall front end of the truck here. Nicely cast headlights. As you can see here, there's actually no pegs to be seen, which is kind of surprising. Kind of a gap right there, but I don't think that's a big deal. And you have the molded in turn signal back there as well. And also a nice texture going on with these lenses. When Bburago first made this model, they did these fully perforated grills, and Maisto kept them, which is great. Although the Ford badge in the center is actually just a sticker, but it's very hard to tell because when you have this push bar blocking it partially, and because it's actually pretty well integrated into the grill. Down here you do get separately cast fog lights and a second grill, which is perforated too. Of course, if you don't get the fire chief or the police versions, you're not going to get the push bar or the light bar. But these are actually pretty well fastened onto the truck. Like I can pick up the truck like this and it does not bend, which is nice to see. I would not pick it up by the light bar for obvious reasons, but it seems like they were meant to kind of be on this truck and not just some kind of, afterthought that they tacked on there. So that's good to see that they're sturdy. And with the push bar, you have kind of these integrated lights on here. Nice kind of matte finish and everything too, which is nice to see. Speaking of matte finish, this truck has an interesting paint scheme going on. You have kind of the nice, shiny, glossy red paint, which is excellent. There are no paint bubbles at all like you would see on older versions of this truck. Very kind of nice, bright finish. You have kind of an interesting sort of rougher matte pattern for the upper part of the truck, which is done in kind of a dark grayish kind of black paint scheme. And they really did an awesome job with this. I wouldn't call it like a smooth matte finish. It kind of has this almost like cross pattern on it. I'm not really sure how to describe the texture, but it's definitely a different texture of paint than the red, which is awesome. A lot of times when budget manufacturers go for two-tone looks like this, they get something wrong, like there's like overspray in one area. But on this one, they perfectly, I think, line up the top portion and the bottom portion with the two different layers and types of paint, which is awesome to see. And it really does create a very cool look with this particular truck, I think. So I think Maisto did an awesome job in that sense. You have some nice wipers on here. And these vents are actually perforated on this like reservoir down here. You never ever see that. But on this model, you do have that, which is kind of strange. The mirrors are not the best. They often come bent or loose on this particular model. I don't know why that is. They are pretty sturdy in my case here, but you're not always going to see that, especially for the older versions of this model. And this mirror did come bent slightly. I kind of had to bend it back, and it just keeps kind of getting warped slightly. You can't really tell when it's on the shelf, but up close, yeah, you can certainly tell. So just keep that in mind. I think it's this fairly common factory defect, but I think in a lot of cases you'll have mirrors that are just fine, especially if you happen to get a newer version of the model. Wheels and tires are well done. These are black as opposed to the chrome that you would see on the regular version of the SVT Lightning model. You do have full steering, no suspension, however, and these wheels are kind of wobbly, so keep that in mind. Older versions of the model will come with branded Goodyear tires. You kind of lost that, I think, after 2009, but at least the current wheels and tires look pretty well done on here. And of course, you do have steering, as I already mentioned, but you do not get suspension, because Bburago never did suspension, and they're the original maker of this casting, so they didn't put it on there. And Maisto did not add suspension when they began making this model themselves. And you have kind of these side vents. Not really too sure what these are. They're on the real Lightning, and on this casting, they're pretty well done and kind of separately cast plastic pieces. Back here, a common problem with the older versions of this model were that these trim pieces would just pop off, or you can just pull them right off. On this newer Maisto version, they're very sturdy, and they're a nice kind of textured plastic. They even put a nice textured kind of trim piece on top of this tailgate here, and a separately cast like handle. Usually budget manufacturers would just kind of cheap out, maybe paint this on or paint that on. But Bburago, when they first made this model, they put on these kind of separately cast trim pieces, which is nice to see. Of course, the older versions had very loose ones, and they were kind of bent and warped, but Maisto has since corrected that problem since they adopted this casting as part of their lineup. And in the bed back here, it is fully painted, which is kind of cool. There is some underspray, though, in these corners, but I don't think that's a big deal. I got this from Sam's Club for like 17 bucks, so most issues are going to be pretty, I think, excusable for that price range. And you can find this model elsewhere in the various colors that I mentioned for usually between $20 and $50, depending on how old it is, what paint color it is, and where you're actually getting it from. But Maisto only makes it currently in the regular kind of darker red version and this Fire Chief version. And of course, in the back here, you do have nicely done taillights as well. There is one peg on each one, but that's not really a big deal, I don't think. They are the correct overall size and shape, which is nice to see. And then you have this kind of nice job with this texturing back here on the bumper. And then you have this Michigan manufacturer's plate. This is February 99. In terms of opening features, you do have the opening rear tailgate, which opens up like so. It is kind of tight when you first open it, so just keep that in mind. It does not go all the way down. I'm not sure if on the real Lightning if it does that or not, but cool touch. There is some excess plastic here. I might just paint that over, so you might have some minor defects like that if you do happen to get this model. But yeah, the tailgate does close kind of nice and tight. Another kind of issue to keep in mind for this model is that older versions will have kind of looser tailgates that may even come off if you're not careful enough. But I think Maisto has since kind of alleviated that problem when they adopted this casting, and they have since improved the quality on it in those senses. And you do have the exhaust on the side here. Looks very cool. It is done in all chrome, but most budget models will have chrome exhaust systems, so that's not a big deal. In addition, you do have an opening hood. Let's take a look at that next. The engine detailing in this model is actually very well done. You can see all the way down to the bottom, you have multiple components in there. All the different wires and fans and everything are clearly visible and clearly casted and separately kind of done pieces of plastic. You have kind of black and some chrome and some kind of darker gray details in there. When Bburago first made this, that was kind of this model's, I think, holy grail feature, was the engine. And Maisto certainly kept all these details when they adopted this casting for their own line. You even have kind of the wire terminals for like the battery and stuff back there. That's just very cool to see. And of course, you can see all the way down at the bottom of the truck, which is a very cool touch. Kind of on the heavy side, I think, for the chrome in terms of this main block here, but again, this is a budget model, so you're not going to have like perfection in that sense in terms of just coloring and whatnot. And the underside of the hood is fully painted. When Maisto adopted this casting, they began fully painting the undersides of the hoods, as opposed to leaving it as kind of bare, partially painted metal. So I think that's a cool touch there. The hood hinges are kind of thin, so just be careful with that. You don't want to open it up too often or too wide, or else they may bend and eventually the hood won't be able to keep up with its own weight. So just keep that in mind, but that shouldn't be a big problem. And of course, you have opening doors on the model as well. They open up on these dog legs. They open up nice and wide too. An issue with all versions of this model is that the doors do become loose after some time. I think to fix that, you would have to take apart the model and kind of tightly screw in the dog leg screws that are holding the doors in place. So that's kind of inconvenient. And I guess the best way to avoid that is to not open the doors too much, which is what I'm kind of doing with this model here. So in terms of interior detailing, Bburago, when they first made the model, they did an okay job. I mean, this whole center stack is just a sticker, and Maisto did not kind of take care of this defect when they adopted the casting. But aside from that, you do have some different, colors and textures going on in here, which is nice to see. The center portion, I think, is a separately cast piece from the dashboard, or it might just be very well painted. I'm not really too sure on that. Steering wheel does not look that great. It is the right shape, but there should be some more kind of contours in the center part, and there should definitely be either a Ford or an SVT badge, but Bburago didn't put that on there. And Maisto certainly didn't add that, unfortunately. And the dashboard itself is decently done. There are some kind of rough edges on here and stuff, but at least it is the accurate shape you would see if this were the real truck. Door panels were decently done too. You have kind of two different textures going on, which you would see on the real truck, and two different colors as well. You got kind of the light gray down here, and then you have the black for this upper portion here, which is a cool touch. The doors, I think, are a bit too thin, but I think the real truck kind of had thin doors, so keep that in mind, I suppose. I think the best feature of the interior here are the seats. Bburago/Maisto accurately captured the details of the seats you would see on the real truck. You have not only two different colors, but two different textures going on. The black kind of has a more rough texture compared to the light gray. And they even have the center armrest folded down. On the real truck, this could be folded back up and you had kind of a three-seater vehicle. But what Bburago did was they molded the seat so you had the armrest kind of folded down. I think the cheaper method would have been to just have this be a single bench seat with this folded up. But I kind of like that extra sort of detail that Bburago/Maisto has put in there. There's a cup holder in there. It's actually kind of shallow, I think. I'm not sure if that's like that on the real truck or not. And I believe this does open, this kind of lid back here, if this were the real truck. But accurately done seats, I think, for the most part. Kind of on the smaller side, but at least they are kind of the right like thickness and everything and proportions. And you do actually get seat belts as well that have a nice texture to them. They're kind of tucked away back there, so they are kind of hard to see. And you actually do get molded in floor mats on here, which is a very cool touch. They have a different texture from the actual floor, which is great. Of course, you can't actually pull these up, but at least Bburago put them in there in the first place. So with the lack of detailing, you do have some, I guess, silver linings, like the seats and these kind of extra floor mats that kind of make up for that lack of detailing in other areas of this interior. And the pedals are all kind of on one single bar and molded in place like that. I wish they kind of done them as separately cast pieces. They are the right shape, but you wouldn't have that kind of bar, like that mounting bar, if this were the real truck. So that's unfortunate, but again, the other details of the interior, I think, do kind of make up for that. Just a shame that this wasn't in true 1/18th scale, but at least I guess it's okay for 1/21st scale. Last but not least, we'll take a look at the undercarriage of the model. And you have a pretty well detailed undercarriage down here. For sure, you can see there's the full spare tire. All the exhaust components are there. You have all different colors going on. You can see some of the metal from the actual like die casting as well, which is very cool to see. You have kind of dark gray here for the interior floor, and then you have all the engine detailing kind of poking out through there. Like there's the radiator and the fan, other wiring and fans and everything. I think this is one of Bburago's best undercarriages that they've done, and Maisto certainly kept all these details when they adopted this casting as part of their kind of a lineup. So overall, aside from this being a very odd scale and from some of the detail defects and I guess some build quality issues if you happen to get an older version, this is a pretty cool truck model. And if you're a fan of the F150 or just the F150 Lighting, I think this is a pretty good addition to your collection. And also, if you're a fan of, kind of unusual pickup trucks, which this certainly was one. Maisto still makes this one today, but you can only find it in just one color. I think retirement is imminent for this particular model, but I keep saying that and thinking that, and every year it kind of reappears in their catalog. I think a lot of people aren't really a big fan of this model due to just the odd scale that it is and the fact that it just kind of, has remained just sitting around in Maisto's lineup. But I'd say definitely give this one a chance, as long as you're getting a newer version that kind of has resolved the build quality issues that you would have seen with the older versions. And if you find it in a particularly cool color that you like too, I would say it would be worth getting. I definitely would not pay much over $40 for this model, just because it does have those various issues, especially if it does happen to be an older version. But I think anything like $45 or below, you're getting a decent deal. And if you find the one that I have here at Sam's Club for $17, then that's an excellent deal. So overall, I hope this was kind of a helpful overview of this model, and feel free to comment down below with your thoughts on it. Thanks for watching.